I do have some questions. You want me to come forward, or is this okay?
Mr. Morgan, we can hear you loud and clear from there.
Okay, that'd be good. I just soon sit down and stand up, and I've almost fell down that steps there before.
Okay.
I do have some comments. This is based on the LERs, the licensee event reports. Just as note, there were 3 scrams in 2014. Based on what I've seen and reviewed on the LERs, Unit 3 had 2 scrams and Unit 1 had 1 scram. Concerning the Unit 3 scram, Browns Ferry automatic reactor scram due to a turbine trip on a moisture separator level. And this was March 18th, 2014. The root cause was identified as evidently as foreign material during the manufacturing process that made it into that moisture separator, moisture separator level controller. It was said that it was a manufacturing defect, a legacy issue dating back to 1971 when the controller body was originally machined. The corrective actions to prevent occurrence requires removal, cleaning of air passages, replacement of control relays for similar controllers, and upgrading the calibration procedure to include cleaning guidance. So my question, has this been corrected? So those items identified during that scram with the foreign material and evidently the breaking down of that moisture separator level controller, has that been corrected?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that. We have reviewed the LER, like you said, it resulted in an LER. We determined that the proposed and actually they've implemented some of the corrective actions. We determined those were appropriate to do. It's, you know, that particular day, that particular moisture separator controller was obviously corrected. Otherwise they wouldn't have been able to start back up. But the bigger question is, are they doing things to make sure that they don't have things that result in scrams? And we believe they are. Based on our reviews, they're going after that problem. You know, the licensee doesn't like scrams either. We don't, but they don't like it either. So it's in their best interest to fix that kind of thing. Our concern is initiating events have risk associated with them, and but we did look at the corrective actions. So yes, we believe they have.
There were some additional comments in that LER that actually I was a little more concerned about rather than the event itself. In those comments, additional info in the report contributing causes. One was a Browns Ferry organizational weakness and procedural guidance created a condition with less than adequate mitigating strategy. 2, the operators were slow to recognize the need to insert a manual scram of the reactor upon validation of an existing high level in the moisture separator with no other method available for reducing reactor power or controlling moisture separator water level. Now this is what is bothersome to me about that. The comment in the LER also, because and circumstances for each human performance related root cause. There was no human performance related root cause. I would, based on the wording of the LER, that would be questionable because of organizational weakness is a result of interaction of people. The operators were slow to recognize the need to insert a manual scram that also involves people. So people were involved in the root cause. So what is the NRC's position when an LER is submitted that says there was no root cause involving people? And actually there was a root cause involving people because operators are people and organizational weakness, it goes back to people and management of the facility. So what's y'all's position on that?
Well, first, I think what the LER was trying to say is that the root cause, the direct sole, why did the scram occur, was due to the equipment FME issue. You know, we don't just look at the LER. We go interview people and we try to understand what contributed. They have a corrective action system, a corrective action program that addresses the people issues. They just don't call that the root cause because they're trying to be as accurate as they can when they answer an LER, and they don't want to imply that the reason the scram occurred was because of a human performance issue. The licensee knows there was human performance issues. They're not going to put it in writing that that's what caused the scram. And we agree with that on this particular example.
Yeah, I guess I would add is our routine practice is whenever we get an event report, the NRC, inspects that issue for the sole purpose of ensuring that any causal evaluation was accurately done and reflects the real cause of the issue, and that their corrective actions taken really address that issue. So, like Dave was saying, we did look at this issue, we reviewed their root cause and their contributing causes, and we made sure that their corrective action program had actions to address those causes and contributing causes.
So the corrective, are you saying that the corrective action program then addressed the human interaction with the machine?
The corrective action program addressed the root causes and all contributing causes, of which the human performance issues
Right.
were contributing causes.
Good.
That's what we verified.
The other scram on, thank you, I appreciate that. The other scram on Unit 3 was automatic reactor scram due to anticipated transient without scram. In other words, an alternate rod insertion signal generated during a functional test. Corrective actions were to install time delay relays in association with reactor AT VVS circuit on Browns Ferry Units 1, 2, and 3, and replace the GE Master Slave ATU cards associated with the initiating event. Has all the slave cards been replaced that basically caused this event? And Dave, we've talked about this before. Was this another situation with conflict between systems, older systems compared with newer updates, or not?
First question you asked, are all the cards replaced? I can't say that for sure, but I think they are. Maybe the TVA people could confirm that. But the second question, old equipment, new equipment, no. There was an equipment issue, and it did give the logic signal that obviously resulted in a scram. We believe they fixed all those card issues for that particular issue. But I don't think it had to do with old technology or new technology that I know of. I don't know. Steve or anybody over there? Yeah.
I can confirm that the ATU cards in that circuit have been replaced. And Dave's correct, it was not a case of old and new technology. It was actually a case of the testing setup allowed for the conflict between the two cards.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Let's see here. Oh. There were some valve problems also. Let's see, was this? Yeah. I also noticed in looking through the LERs and reports that there was valve corrosion problems, and one of the solutions to those valve corrosion problems was to coat them with platinum. And has that been all the, I guess you would say, the valve corrosions causing them to stick? Has all the coating been completed?
I'll start with that. I think I can give you a pretty good answer, Randy, that you understand. The valves you're talking about specifically are what they call main steam relief valves. Mm-hmm. There's, on every unit, there's 13 of these valves. And their main purpose is to be able to depressurize the reactor system. Because if you can depressurize, you can get more water in. So a valve that would open late or not open at all would be a concern. This is a generic industry concern at all the plants, not just BWRs even, just all the plants that have these type of relief valves. And they're big valves. You know, they remove a lot of steam energy. To be honest with you, we looked at this very specifically. The industry was having problems. The valves were opening late. They have a tech spec that says the valves have to open within 3% of the set point. So high or low, they go test them, and if they don't lift within 3%, they have to report it in an LER. So that's how you found out about it, I guess. So I looked at this because I was concerned about that just recently, and when I reviewed the history, I found out that this has been a problem probably for at least 8 or 10 years that I went back and looked back. But the good news is they are doing this platinum coating. I believe it actually started at Brunswick. They had somebody there that suggested this, and Browns Ferry and some other utilities have picked up this problem and this possible solution and embraced it, and they are getting much better results with these valves. They do what they call as-found testing. They test them at the end of a cycle, and they used to get 10 or 13 of them that would lift late, but you have to keep in mind that's the tech specs. The NRC sets what I consider like bounding windows on safety, and it's more a component could not work, but it would still do its function. But we want them to tell us if it's losing margin to its function. And so we have these tech specs, and so they were required to report these. Their success rate, I think the last time they did one of these, they only had one, and the time before that was like only 2. They are on a very good trend to kill this. It's like killing cancer. They're getting close to killing this problem. The industry, not just Browns Ferry. What's also very interesting is they do most of the rehab or refurbishment of these valves with a company right in Huntsville. But then that company sends them off for the platinum coating to a place in Texas. And I sat down with their system engineer that owns these valves. And to be honest with you, I was pretty impressed that she could show me their trend, show me that they've had some cases where the platinum wasn't put on right, and they rejected it, and they don't have it completely fixed yet, but they're getting there. And it is a safety improvement, and in the industry, there are some other plants that are not doing as well as Browns Ferry. In fact, I just sent one of my guys over to the facility in Huntsville recently because we as a region were concerned about this other plant because they weren't, they had a slightly different model of the valve. And so the point I'm trying to impress on you is we're very aware of the significance of these valves, and we're expending additional resources to make sure we understand it. And just me personally, I think they're going in the right direction. It's a mechanical component. It sits there for 2 years where it might not move. I think eventually they're going to lick it and get it fixed completely where they never have to report this. But in their safety analysis, they don't need all the valves to work. They don't need them all to work within that 3%. And when we reviewed the LERs, we were convinced that they didn't have a loss of safety function in this case. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you. I had made a note in my notes here in my sheets that of valve corrosion and the fix. So yeah, it definitely
They call
helps
it corrosion bonding.
Yeah, corrosion
It's
bonding.
a chemical thing.
And there's not going to be any problem with the platinum coating. Is it going to stay? Of course, I realize this is it's not something. These valves are not something that's used on a daily basis, right? I mean, it's
No,
just
they're
emergency.
hopefully just emergency use.
That's right. And so there's probably not a problem with the coatings coming off the valve. In other words, it's going to be a
It's like any mechanical system. You have to monitor it.
yeah.
You can always find a better technology, but right now I think they're the best they've ever been.
Cool.
They're not perfect, but they're close.
Have some more questions. Another scram. There's a scram on let's see, that's been August 26th on Unit 1. Turbine generator neutral overvoltage causes a reactor scram. This is a result of a fuse to generator circuit breaker potential transformer to clear a fault due to improper fuse size. I mean, how do you get an improper fuse size? That's a question. I don't know. Let's deal with that if we could. How do you not put the correct size fuse in that circuit?
On this specific one, I didn't, oh, thank you, Mike. I didn't do the LER review, and actually I was away from the site for a couple months doing another rotation, but I don't know how they got the improper fuse on this one. I'd be guessing that maybe they can comment. But, you know, it is, you alluded to it earlier on the first item, I think. There's always a man-machine interface in everything they do with these plants. And you also discuss safety culture, and Mr. Bono talked specifically about you can't be happy with just meeting the regulatory requirements. You know, I could go offline and tell you all kinds of things. We deal with younger people, different cultures. You know, the number of decisions and challenges these people get on a daily basis is enormous. It's like being a doctor in a hospital. You have to be perfect every time, and people can't do that. But on this particular one, I don't know the answer. I have to admit, I'm like you. If there's a specification that tells you what that fuse size should be, it ought to be right. And their corrective actions ought to figure it out and make sure it doesn't happen again, if they can. But they have to have never-ending vigilance to make sure their people are focused. I don't know. TVA maybe?
I can add some level of detail. The fuse sizing, this was a fuse that was installed as part of an equipment upgrade. So as we go through and we invest in the plant and we continue to upgrade components, this happened to be one of them. The fuse sizing was actually done as part of a vendor-supplied design. So it was a component that is used beyond nuclear plants. It's used in a lot of different applications. The onus is on us to understand how they size that fuse and then why that would meet our requirements. So our learning from this event was to be more intrusive and rigorous in vendor-supplied equipment to make sure we understand how it will perform and that it meets all of our requirements. So that onus is on us to do that investigation. We understand that. That was our learning from that event you speak.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, I've been coming to these a long time. I've been coming to these meetings before Dave was the senior inspector over there. And so I'm not going to sit up here and say that there hasn't been improvement. There's been a tremendous amount of improvement at Browns Ferry, and appreciate it. Hey, because, and I know y'all appreciate it too, because y'all live here. I live a few miles down the road. If something goes bad, you know, it's going to affect y'all right here before it's going to affect me. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate y'all keeping the power on, and I appreciate the NRC's attention to detail. But I think it's very important that the public comes forward and asks questions, and I appreciate the answers. You know, I know y'all don't have this, you know, thing supposed to be addressed to the NRC, and I appreciate the TVA, you know, forthcoming on this. So let's see, do I have anything else about the LERs? We talked about the valve problems. Yeah, so basically, I think what we're saying here, it was a vendor that installed the wrong size fuse, but the component used in other applications. So then, you know, there has been some problems within the TVA system before for improper used components that should not have been in nuclear, and I believe it was up at Watts Bar, they were cited for that and received a fine. Is this component, is that an authorized component that can be used in nuclear facilities? Or is it not an authorized component, and that's part of the problem?
I think you're referring to a commercial grade dedication program.
That's right.
I think there were some issues at the other Tennessee Valley Authority facility. I'm not sure, was this component part of that program?
The component we're speaking of is the main generator breaker. It does not have a safety function and was not subject to the commercial grade dedication process. It was authorized for use in its application.
Thank you, appreciate that. I don't know, Dave. Maybe I want to talk to you after here. I've got some questions on the integrated inspection report, which just came out. This is probably different from the what we're talking about here. Am I correct on that, or you want me to ask these questions too?
2015 first quarter report.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk to you about that offline if you'd like.
Okay, that'd be good. There is one other thing I do want to mention related to, I'm concerned about the license amendments. Now, this report just came out too. But I want to mention it here because this concerns technical specifications, plus the TVAs here and folks that work TVA, y'all are here, so this gives an opportunity. I'm an opportunity, and it's knocking at the door. So, you're going to, you're requesting some technical spec changes to the reactor core safety limits. And like I said, this is a new document that just came out. So, but my question to y'all and everybody concerned in this, please, let's not stretch that safety margin to a breaking point. Browns Ferry is an older reactor. I do realize that it had a 40-year life expectancy, and that life expectancy has been extended another 20 years. But when you're talking about fuel, and when you're talking about that reactor pressure vessel, which undergoes, and there has been an amount of scrams over at Browns Ferry, that reactor pressure vessel becomes embrittled. The wells to spray nozzles becomes embrittled. And so I'm just asking, particularly the NRC, to consider this safety margin on this aging reactor. It's the old bathtub model. As we get up here on this end of that bathtub in that model, there's going to be an accident. It's either going to be over here on this end or it's going to be over here at the aging end. So, and we're over here toward the aging end and stretching that safety margin due to extended fuel usage and higher burnup fuel. This is it's a concern, and I'm just asking you to pay specific close attention to this, and please don't stretch that safety margin to the point where that is going to be breaking. Okay, that's a comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. In fact, we have our program manager from Headquarters here, and she handles all the license amendment come through, so this tech spec amendment will be one of those. Thanks.
Do you want, the specific license amendment that you're talking about, it just submitted. We are reviewing it. We have requests for additional information from them. So it's just the beginning of review, but we are considering everything. It's nothing related to change of fuel or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I am not reviewing it technically, but I know that the people also reviewing, they are very experienced people, that they have done it for a long time, and it's just the beginning of the review of it. It just they just started, and until we make sure of every safety issues related to it and its concern resolved, definitely won't be approved.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it is something recent. But there is, and I've got the document here and I've made some notes on it. I did notice that on the document, see, with nuclear power, I'm an old medical guy, right, and administrator, so attention to detail is important. When somebody messes up, a doctor messes up, it's probably because somebody along the line didn't pay enough attention to detail. I noticed here on this document it says the power ratio margins due to the depleted state of the fuel. Now, also I'm a military guy too, so when I see depleted, I immediately think of depleted uranium. Of course, that fuel, when it remains in that reactor for an extended amount of time, it's really not depleted. Its usefulness is decreased because it's extremely radioactive. But depleted, no, maybe usefulness, usage, I could see that. But again, attention to detail. And of course, this goes out to the public. And the public may think, well, depleted. But it's actually not depleted. Its usefulness is curtailed because it's highly radioactive. Now, if I'm wrong there, please correct me.
It's far more deadly, too.
Dangerous,
And,
yeah. And this is stretching that margin, you see.
Gary, I believe, and it's submitted from TVA, When they use the terminology, I think they're using it a different way than you do. What they're saying is the fuel starts in a U-235 state, and once it goes through fission, it becomes a different isotope.
Right.
That's what they're calling depleted. They're saying, it's really what you were saying, its usefulness has changed, but the terminology they're using is, it's no longer strictly the U-235, it's a different isotope. It's still there, it won't produce fissions like U-235 would anymore. It's part of their request, it's part of their logic on why they think they can get the amendment approved. They're not trying to mince the words or anything, they're just trying to state that there's not as much U-235 anymore.
Well, there is concern of fuel usage in Browns Ferry, and so this is the reason I'm bringing this forward. And I appreciate, I know it's not going to be approved unless, you know, the TVA can show that there's not going to be a safety issue. I mean, you know, stretching that band to where it breaks, so to speak. I have faith that y'all not going to let that happen, are you?
The reviewers.
That's right.
Yeah, we do even sometimes independent analysis and other things as we need. We have different offices that research, that they do additional work, and they provide help, support for additional work, so as to. If you
Gary,
need
what
it
I
for
would
it.
suggest is Faraday offline can tell you the type of qualification and experience of people that review that. I think that would help you out.
Thank you.
But I would say, I worked in the Office of Research for a 6-month rotation in a branch that does a lot of that work, and I was very impressed. I had a somewhat jaded perspective of just how much independent computing and assessment capability we have. I was very impressed. There was 15 PhDs in the branch. They all knew how to work the computer programs. We had our own capability of doing independent analysis on a lot of these fuel parameters. And I can assure you that we take that job very seriously. You'll see, if you look at our correspondence back to the licensee, there's a lot of questions that are asked to make sure we understand the analysis that was performed. So we're not going to authorize anything that we're not convinced unless it's safe.
Thank you.
Oh,